The utility a consumer gets from one good is the same as the other.
On track, perfect substitute is the correct answer.
Dash are factors that have been shown to affect consumer behavior.
Good job. Your answer, brand name, quality, newness, and complexity works well here. What does the ABC stands for in consumer attitude and perspective? Valid point. Affect behavior cognition is true. There are 3 big things that affect consumer behavior, except dash. You chose facility, and it is correct. Tracking customer behavior in different situations is the method. Nice work. You chose observe reality, and it is correct. If performance meets consumer expectations, the consumer is dash. Strong choice. Satisfied is the right answer. Dash refers to how an individual perceives a particular message. Well reasoned. Consumer interpretation is the correct choice. Which of the following is not general purchasing decision model? Correct. Design model is the right answer. To one of the 5 steps in the consumer decision-making process. Right choice. Need recognition is the best answer.
Which of the following organizations publishes consumer reports?
Clear logic. Your choice consumer union is sound and 100% true. Marginal utility of a consumer dash along an indifference curve. Right again. Diminishes is a valid answer.
Operant conditioning is a learning process which includes
Exactly. Shaping behavior through reinforcement and punishment makes sense, and it is right choice. Which of the following is not a component of consumer behavior? In sharp thinking, supply chain management is the right choice.
The second stage in the consumer decision-making model is dash.
Perfect. Information search is the correct choice. If we become well-being humans, we will become exception humans.
Well done. Increase enthusiasm to become richer is the right choice.
What factors can influence an individual consumer's behavior?
Great thinking. All of the above is the right choice.
The study of consumers and how they make decisions is called
Smart pick. Consumer behavior is the correct choice.
which is not a step in the consumer decision-making process.
Correct response. Identify a target market is the most accurate answer.
Discuss the role of family in influencing consumer behavior.
Great job. Family influences consumer behavior through socialization, values, and norms is the accurate answer. What do we take into account when characterizing a consumer?
Solid response. All answers are correct is a valid choice.
The consumer decision-making process begins when consumers. Excellent. Recognize a need is a brilliant choice.
There are 5 consumer behavior influence factors except dash.
Nice selection. Physical factors is the correct and valid answer. Consumer satisfaction is necessary to achieve dash and dash.
Well picked. Good word of mouth and repeat purchases is the correct answer.
What are the 3 types of decisions in consumer behavior?
Smart move. Routine decisions, limited decision-making, and extensive decision-making is an accurate answer.
The study of how people make decisions when they purchase.
You got it? Your choice consumer behavior is right.
Dash are defined as the luxuries which a consumer craves. Nicely done. Once is a solid answer. The final step in the consumer decision-making process is. Bravo. Post-purchase evaluation is the answer. External factors that influence consumer behavior. Except. Excellent choice. Self-worth is the right answer. How do psychological factors influence consumer behavior?
You're right. They relate to an individual's motivation, perception, and attitude is the correct answer.
The consumer perception process has 3 stages, namely dash. Good thinking. Exposure, attention, and interpretation is the right answer. The component of attitude related to response is called solid response. Behavior is a valid choice. What are the factors that influence consumer motivation? Nice selection. Personal needs, perception, attitudes, beliefs, and cultural influences is the correct and valid answer. What role do economic factors play in consumer behavior? Exactly. They affect a consumer's purchasing power and spending patterns make sense. And it is right choice. What is not included in the consumer behavior model is clear logic. Your choice purchase intention is sound and 100% true. The social and cultural aspects of life as a consumer. Excellent. External influences is a brilliant choice. Consumer buyer behavior is the buying behavior of dash. Strong choice. Final consumers is the right answer.
Which is not an important aspect of consumer behavior.
Perfect. Increase company sales is the correct choice.
Dash refers to the buying behavior of final consumers.
Good job. Your answer consumer buyer behavior works well here.
The point of consumers' equilibrium informs about dash.
Answer 1 and 2 both are true is the answer.
When income of the consumer decreases, the budget line.
Nicely done. Shifts leftward is a solid answer. Which one described the affordability of the consumer? Sharp thinking. Demand is the right choice. Which is not a role of research in consumer behavior. Well picked. Interpretative approach is the correct answer. Reductions of combined consumer and producer surplus. Great thinking. Deadweight loss is the right choice. What is the most popular model of consumer behavior? Good thinking. Model ECB is the right answer.
Person using or consuming goods and/or services is.
You got it? Your choice consumer is right. What are the basic principles of consumer behavior?
Great job. Maximize benefits is the accurate answer.
Title of consumer behavior book used this semester. Correct response. Consumer behavior is the most accurate answer. Marginal utility curve of a consumer is also his. You're right. Demand curve is the correct answer.
What is the role of marketers in decision-making? Nice work! You chose to understand and influence consumer decisions, and it is correct.
First step of creating marketing strategy is dash.
Smart pick. Marketing analysis is the correct choice. The purchase lies with the parents in this case. Right choice. Routine buying behavior is the best answer. You can always expect consumers to act in a dash. Well-reasoned. Rational behavior is the correct choice, which is not a dimension of consumer knowledge. Well done. Adjective knowledge is the right choice. How does culture influence consumer behavior? Excellent choice. Shape values and preferences is the right answer. Consumer behavior answer the very question of. Correct. Why do we shop is the right answer. Application of consumer behavior, except dash. Smart move. Legal assessment is an accurate answer.
Impact of a stockout situation, except dash.
Right again. Attribute shifts is a valid answer. Buys a product or service for personal use. You chose final consumer, and it is correct. Efficiency loss is another term for dash.
Valid point. Deadweight loss is true.
Patronage motives can be strengthened by. On track. Keeping the business name in front of the customer is the correct answer. What does consumer behavior refer to? Solid response. The study of how individuals make purchasing decisions is a valid choice. What does consumer behavior focus on? Smart pick. Buyer is the correct choice.
A consumer reaches equilibrium when?
Clear logic. Your choice marginal utility is equal to price is sound and 100% true.
The outbreak of the coronavirus has?
Sharp thinking. Unpended life and business in unimaginable ways is the right choice. Person buying product or services.
Valid point. Customer is true.
An indifference curve is related to. Exactly. Choices and preferences of consumer make sense, and it is right choice.
Consumer behavior can be defined as? You chose a field of study focusing on consumer activities, and it is correct.
Perception in marketing begins with. Good thinking. All answers are correct is the right answer. What does a demand curve represent? Excellent. The relationship between price and quantity demanded is a brilliant choice. This is the new marketing concept.
Nice work. You chose consumer orientation, and it is correct.
Apa arti dari customer behavior?
Great job. Consumer behavior is the accurate answer.
Author of consumer behavior books.
You got it. Your choice Schiffman, Leon G. Wisenblit. Joseph is right. Cognitive dissonance is part of.
Great thinking. Evaluation of alternatives and purchase is the right choice. Consumer behavior includes dash. Nice selection. All of these is the correct and valid answer. The goal of a consumer is to. Right choice. Maximize utility is the best answer. What is consumer behavior? Bravo! The study of consumers and how they make decisions is the answer.
Reference group is 1.
Well done. All of above is the right choice.
Who is the consumer?
Good job. Your answer potential buyer and buyer of the product works well here. What is a consumer?
Nicely done. A person who consumes goods and services is a solid answer.
CDM stands for dash.
Right again. Consumer decision making is a valid answer.
How you will get all these quiz questions in PDF books format.
Perfect. Contact Narayan Changder is the correct choice.